from these
My name is Coach Willing. I'm the general manager.
Yes, I'm homegrown from these sides.
I want to first introduce the space, and then I'll move into house rules. So how many of you, this is your first time here? Holy smokes, wow. Okay. Huh? No, actually the Varsity Theater was the parking lot. They knocked it down. They got a big fine for it too. So Waiwai Collective, we've been here for 8 years now. We started in 2017. We are a gathering space. That was the intention of the space. The reason that we started it is because there was, and there kind of still is, a lack of gathering spaces in Hawaii. Gathering spaces are super important to communities and for communities. And we really wanted, when we did research on looking at other modern indigenous communities that have existed for thousands of years and continue to exist, they all have gathering spaces, like intentional gathering spaces specific to their community where they can practice their culture, their values, their language all the time, completely normalized. We don't have that in Hawaii for our native people, and even for our people that live here. And, you know, I always like to use the example of Chinatown. They're like in every major city. Like the Chinese, they knew what they were doing when they started Chinatowns. So you can go to Chinatown and you can speak Chinese. You can go to the bank and do your business banking in Chinese. And that's why they are so resilient and they thrive and they're all over the world. And there's nothing like that. The only thing I think in Hawaii is the Bishop Museum. That's like truly a Hawaiian space. And museums are for dead stuff and where culture is very much alive. And so this is one of four locations that we have, 3 on Oahu. This location, we have Kaneohe, and then we have one in Chinatown on Nuuanu Avenue. And then our 4th location is in Kapa'a on Kauai. We will be expanding. We hope to be in all the communities in Hawaii that will have us. What we do today is we're co-working spaces. So all of the spaces have an aspect of co-working. We also do a lot of these kinds of events, community programming, if you will. We do a lot of professional convenings. Lots of board meetings happen here. And then we also do a lot of like concerts, film screenings, book launches, poetry readings, and things like that. Our Chinatown location is in collaboration with Native Books. So a lot of those kinds of art-related events happened over there. If you have any, we also do private space rentals. So if you have any questions about that, I will be here throughout this event and I can answer all those for you. House rules, we have one rule. Take off your shoes when you enter the space. That is an intentional rule. We do that when we go to people's homes or even our own home in Hawaii. We may not know that, but it reminds us that we're guests and to act accordingly. I shouldn't, when you go to someone's house, they're not telling you like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. They're like, just take off your shoes and you know where you're at. You know your place. And that's it. Clean up after yourselves. There's homes for everything, so put it back where you got it, that kind of stuff. Restrooms. There's two toilets in this room over here by the Oven Eye Bar. There's no trash receptacles in the restroom. That's also intentional because before we didn't have paper. We try our best to not have any disposables in here, and COVID changed all that, so we have to go back to using paper towels. So the trash is outside the door. It's underneath the counter. If you need water, there's a water station right there. It says "Buy" on top of it, and there's cups for you, and you can also fill up your water bottles. Parking. So our parking lot for this space is on this side, on the EVA side. It's free today. Um, Normally you get 2 hours for free anyways, but you have to scan the code up there. But today, because of this closure, it's the first day that they're doing this. They made all the parking free, so it didn't confuse anybody. So don't worry about scanning the code or anything. You guys are all good. I think that's it for the house rules. Make yourself at home. There's pillows up here. If there's not enough chairs or your chair is uncomfortable, there's lots of chairs over here. You can help yourself. And that's it. Enjoy your time here. Mahalo.
Thank you, guys. Again. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And thank you again to the collective for allowing us to have this gathering today. My name is Neil Kanimoto. I'm one of the executive committee members of the Hawaii Ocean Safety Team. Ocean Safety, that is what our committee meets on monthly, and to discuss ocean safety issues. It ranges from the harbors to around the state, okay, waters around the state. Just to give you some background, every major port in the United States has one of these safety committees. It's a mostly voluntary committee. Hawaii, when we started it, in fact, our founder there, Robin Bond Sr., thank you, Robin, founded back in 1989, started this. Every major port has one of these committees, and it mainly focuses on safety within the harbor. Hawaii is a different beast. We have a lot of commercial and recreational activities within our harbors and main harbors and small boat harbors also. So it was decided to combine all the ocean safety issues into one. The last general membership meeting was held 3 months ago at the Outrigger Canoe Club. Normally would have it in someone's office or something, and it exposed us to a greater audience, an audience we never, was exposed to, and it's free. The general membership meetings are open to the public, and at the end of every meeting, we always ask of the public, do you have any ocean safety concerns that you would like the committee to discuss? And it was pretty, they had a lot of responses that everybody's concerned about sharks and shark attacks in Hawaii, and perceived increase in shark attacks. Even from the fishermen's side, we're losing all our fish to sharks. We've never experienced this much predation before, and as a fisherman, I can say, yeah. So anyway, so we've answered the call. The committee and volunteers reached out into the community, and we've assembled a panel. And again, thank you everyone for assembling here. And let me call upon our moderator, Robin Bond Jr. Robin, all to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin. I'm Robin's senior son, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out today to support learning a little something about shark attacks. That being said, I want to remind everybody that this is not supposed to be a yelling match for people getting heated. We've seen that in the past with some angry fishermen or some angry surfers or what have you. Like, we don't need that here today. Like, I can't stress enough that this isn't about trying to be an us or them type of thing. It's purely just about trying to get information about shark attacks and how to stay safe. So that being said, we really don't need to hear anything about bottom fishing. We don't need to hear about any. I mean, it's just not part of the topic today. Shark attacks is what we're talking about today. And when I first took the role of, or the responsibility of putting this panel together, I thought this was going to be a really easy thing to do. I thought, it's just got to get some doctors on board, maybe you get a guy from the state who, of course, yesterday canceled. No offense to the state. I appreciate all of their involvement in the work that they do with us, but it's unfortunate we don't have somebody with the state here today. It was a real treat to have them on board. So next time around, we'll maybe get them to the table. But we do have a representative from the federal government. We have some wonderful doctors here that are going to give us some input. But I first want to just start with thanking everybody for coming out. It matters to me because I call Hawaii my home, and I don't appreciate the idea that people might be getting injured here in Hawaii because of something that's going on. Whatever that something is, we'll figure it out. But today's topic again is just about shark attacks and how to stay safe. So that being said, I want to just ask the panelists to come up. John Titchin If you could come up, Ed and Cully, Dr. Dolmeyer, Dr. Wherever there's Dr. Holland, George Balaz is somewhere in the crowd here. We're going to bring them up in the front so you guys can really focus all of your hatred and anger at them. And then we're going to get started. I'm so excited to be a part of this because I think it's an opportunity for us to make some changes with things that I believe need to be addressed. And we'll get into that shortly. But if you guys don't know Dr. Dolmeyer, he flew in from Big Island to be here today. That's a feat because we didn't pay him to do that. So he's here on his own dime. I'm grateful for that because he's a voice of reason here that we need. John Titchen, I don't think anybody needs any introduction to John Titchen. He was our previous water safety chief. Unfortunately, he's no longer our water safety chief, but it's another story. Non-Dr. Balaz, I needed to stress that Dr. Balaz is not a Dr. Balaz, it is just George Balaz. So, but many of you probably know he is the turtle expert for the state. He has been for my entire life. I was doing necropsies with him when I was 14. I don't even know if he remembers that or not, but yeah, I got to smell what the internals smell like on a turtle that's been, dead for weeks. It's not pleasant. And Cully Kamasugi is a friend of mine from high school days and small kid days. He was cut from the same cloth. His dad let him take boats out, and we were doing stupid stuff at ages we shouldn't have been doing. But he's a good friend of mine. He's also a photographer that's quite celebrated. And oh God, Kim Holland is. I want to say he's a legend in the shark world. Some of you might not agree, but I've spent a bunch of time reading about this issue. I'm brand new to this whole shark attack thing. I'll tell you about myself in a bit, but his name kept coming up over and over again. So did Carl Myers. He wasn't able to make it here today. Carl Myers out of town, but he would have been here, I think, if we could have got him. And then Ed Ebusui, he's a champion bottom fisherman and also somebody that's got quite a bit of experience with sharks and how they relate to the bottom fishing industry and also the ocean dwellers like myself. I'm going to try to keep him at bay because he's been at this for a long time and been dealing with a lot of energy. This is a very contentious topic because it involves people's safety, myself included. A little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. My dad moved to Port Lock when he was, I think he was 8, and I was raised by somebody who loved the ocean, and so I became an ocean dweller myself. I dropped out of school so I could be a commercial diver. I wanted to learn how to weld and do all that stuff underwater. So that's what I did for a living. And it's all I've really known in terms of the ocean is either that or playing in it. So I do a lot of surfing and diving and what have you. And it's always been in my mind that there might be an issue with me getting eaten, because it happens in the state. So when I try to keep myself safe by doing certain things, we're going to hear some of those things today. And I'd like to just start by turning it over actually to Cully Kamasugi, because I'm going to throw Cully under the bus. When I first put this panel together, it was just going to be come hear about shark attacks and hear about how to stay safe. I didn't know anything about what's going on out at Hawai'i with respect to the cageless diving industry. I knew about the cage industry, and I just had a brain fart. I'm totally going to get scoldings for this. We have a cage operator here with us, which is it's a real plus because it's a perspective we need to have. And Kaleo, thank you. I apologize for not introducing you, but I just it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my God, where's the cage guy? Anyway, I didn't think that there was going to be a whole lot of attention to this because I didn't know that there was a bunch of drama going on in the world related to sharks in Hawaii. I thought it was we were put that to bed 20 years ago. I personally didn't have a lot of skin in the game myself because I didn't think that there was any issue that I needed to worry about because the sharks that we see and we have seen for many years at the cage sites are Galapagos, they're sandbars, they're sharks that I don't tend to think of as being problem sharks for a guy like myself. Tiger sharks are a different story, and it's really what got my attention when I started looking into this, and that's why I was going to lead with Cully. I hope he doesn't get pissed off at me, but Cully was actually the person that clued me in that things were a little bit different than what I thought they were. And what I'm talking about specifically is Hawaii has had a thriving cage industry for many years, and they've been smaller sharks. And for whatever reason, and we're maybe hear what those reasons might be, we don't see that same concentration that we once did. We are now starting to see concentrations of tiger sharks in abundance. Now, I've spent my entire life in the ocean. I've seen tiger sharks 4 times in the wild, and I've never seen more than one at a time. I've never seen 2. Cully has dove with sharks where they're feeding on a whale. So I actually saw a shot of his, and if you get a chance, go to his Instagram, you'll be blown away at the stuff that he shoots. But he has a picture with 5 tiger sharks all simultaneously biting a whale. And I thought that was pretty incredible. He also has a shot of underneath, looking up at a whale at night with the shark in between him and the whale, which I thought was pretty interesting. But Cully knows a thing or two about this because he's a photographer and he's been out to these places for many years. He's been shooting a lot of pictures out there, and he was the first person that told me I need to really take a little bit longer to look at this. I dug into it and I started Googling, and what I did, and you're more than welcome to do this, refine your search. Go to your search tools, change your search parameter to just pull up things that have entered the internet world in the last, say, month or year. Don't set it up so that you get everything for the history of the internet. Just refine it to a year and put in the words tiger shark Hawaii. And what you will find is a tremendous volume of videos of people handling large predatory tiger sharks. And when I say like a lot, like there's the most I saw was 15. That's a lot of tiger sharks to be in one spot, you know. Yeah, I got to get on with it here. I'm going to turn it over to Cully, and I'm going to ask Cully to just give 1 or 2 whatever he wants to say about what he thinks are important things that people should know about sharks and how to stay safe.
In general with sharks, I kind of feel there's not much to worry about. Tigers can be a little closer. Is that good? Yeah, in general with sharks, I feel there's not a whole lot to worry about. Tigers can be a little different, and just in the last, say, 20 years since the cage opened, I was always very, very in favor of them and went to the meetings way back when they were under attack to show support. But I'd say since maybe 2019, 2020, the situation kind of changed. And like I used to go out there and dive alone all the time. I'd go fishing, come in, clean my fish at the site, jump in with the sharks, and it wasn't a problem. But lately the numbers, you know, you go out there, there'll be 80 sandbars or something, a bunch of Galapagos, and more recently now you'll see 10, 12 tigers, which is, I've only seen at whale carcasses. So it's, and it's not just that, it's, they're getting very bold, I think because of being handled. They're getting used to being touched by people, and it's getting a little spooky to the point where I don't feel comfortable diving out there alone anymore, or even with friends that aren't experienced. But in general, I don't know. I love diving out of a cage with sharks. It's fun. It can be done safely, but overfeeding, handling, that stuff, I think it's making a dangerous change. I guess that's about it for now, unless there's any questions.
Check. Okay. Thank you, Cully. So we're going to play a video real quick. I should have played that before I started with Cully, but we're going to do it right quick. In case you haven't seen anything and you'd like to see what I'm talking about, this one right here is the one that gets my attention the most. The shark, I mean, I don't know about you, but that looks like a shark that's been trained to do something that it shouldn't do in the wild. I've never seen a shark do this. I've never seen a shark period, like stick its head out of the water like that. And right in my backyard. This is like, I don't know, a mile or two from the channel in Honolulu. So, there's a spot called Hammerhead. There's closer than the channel. But, it's like the Cully and I earlier, you can't see anything coming out from the bottom. The water's not always very, if you did, you'd be able to get it for a second before it got in. So,
People, when you watch it, notice what happens to the tiger shark's eyes when it gets touched. Okay? And I forgot to expect to get to talk about it again later, remind me the reason why I went to see that.
You can see, I mean, they occasionally bite things like ladders and swim steps and what have you, but I've only seen that happen when they've had a reason to come to the boat, you know, like. So, even just something as simple as just rubbing your fingers together can get their attention and get them to come in and check you out, but I'm going to follow here. So I'm going to give this actually to Dr. Okay. So it or Dr. Holland, anyone want to chime in and tell us what we're looking at right now, or what do you think is? What would you say? Well, first, does anyone on this panel believe that that's normal behavior? That was one question I wanted to ask the panel. Like, does that? Dr. Holland. Dr. Holland.
Thanks, Mike. That's not normal behavior. The reflexes that you were talking about are normal, but we don't know enough about which sharks are involved in these incidents. We don't know if it's the same sharks or different sharks. I think that we've already gotten into discussing the specifics about shark tours and their impact on shark behavior, rather than the general topic of shark attacks in Hawaii. And I think that it'd be good to take a bit more of a longer view of what we know about shark attacks in Hawaii, and then discuss what might be going on and where these tour operators are going on. So what my group has been doing for the last 30 or 40 years or so is looking at the movement patterns of tiger sharks in Hawaii. We do this through a combination of techniques. Most of them are involved in some kind of electronic tag, whether it be a simple acoustic pinger or a satellite-linked tag attached to the dorsal fin of the sharks. And so we've been building a picture of what is normal behavior and distribution of tiger sharks in Hawaii. And the short summary of what we're finding is that tiger sharks are common throughout the Hawaiian Islands. They are found mostly in coastal waters, but we've had tracks of animals that will go 300 or 400 miles offshore, turn around and come right back to where they started from. So tiger sharks are not just coastal, they're also pelagic, open ocean animals. They can be 400 miles away. We've also had sharks that we've tagged that showed up right next to Nikos in Honolulu Harbor, or right in the yacht club in Kaneohe, or right against some of the previously aquaculture operations on the Big Island. So tiger sharks are common in Hawaii. They're in very shallow water sometimes, but mostly not. Whether or not there is any influence of the shark cage operators on the behavior of tiger sharks is unknown at this point in terms of whether or not they have a permanent effect on the behavior of the shark, by which I mean, do they get trained? Do they get trained that I want to be here and I'm not going to go anywhere else? I should be going over there or to a few hundred miles away to go mate or go eat there, but I'm going to stay here. We have no evidence that that is occurring. However, the study that we did to show that is now 15 years old. And the number of shark operators on the North Shore now is a lot more than it was 15 years ago. So the data that I'm just describing could be out of date, and that work should be done again, probably. But the point I wanted to get across is that tiger sharks have always been in Hawaii. There's no reason to believe there's any more or fewer now than there was 20 years ago or 200 years ago. So it's against that backdrop that I think we should discuss whether or not these kinds of videos are affecting what we understand about tiger sharks.
I'm going to turn it over to Kaleo. Kaleo is a co-owner of a company,
Hawaii Shark
Hawaiian
Encounters.
And I thought it would be appropriate to ask Kaleo to answer, is this something that you guys see on your eyes? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Obviously, this is a brand new thing for me. I don't do this. I was asking Cleo, is this something that as a cage operator, he sees in his work or his line of work?
Hi, so I've been with Hawaii Shark Encounters since I was 18, about 12 years now. And no, this is not normal behavior. At one point when I first started, having 2 or 3 sightings a year was just a rare treat. It's undeniable that there is more action out there as far as the tiger sharks. We do normally 98%, 99% of the time see Galapagos sharks and even sandbar sharks. Now, even those numbers have changed, where we used to have about 50-50 Galapagos and sandbars. Now it's mainly Galapagos, and for what reasons, I don't know. But as far as that type of behavior, them coming up to the back of the boat, and from my experience, that does seem to be a fairly new behavior that's come about over the last, like we said, since about 18 or 19 is when the harbor's grown tremendously with other operators. And the other company that was running cage shark tours as well, there's now 3. North Shore Shark Adventures and Hawaii Shark Encounters are the first 2. And then most recently, Kala Alexander McCool Rothman opened another cage shark dive. And outside of that, I can't speak too much on because I've never done it. But we went from 2 operations in the harbor to now, I don't know, upwards to 10. So there is a lot more activity out there. How that dictates, what's causing this type of behavior, I can't pinpoint because we don't see this on our tour for multiple reasons. One is the comfort, the interaction with our people. The sharks don't see somebody in a cage as an individual. They see the cage as a whole. So they're not necessarily coming up to the cage in any way, biting a ladder like that. They are a living creature, like I tell our customers who go, why aren't they biting the cage or banging their head on it? And it's because they have feelings. They're not trying to put themselves at risk in any way. There is the science behind it where they have the Ampullae Lorenzini that picks up on electrolysis and that'll attract them to metal objects. But from my experience and from what I saw, going back 12 years, we've never had a tiger shark or any shark intentionally banging at the cage, biting at the cage, or anything like that. Now, those videos, it's undeniable, and their behavior is changing. Now, do we see that on our tour? Not necessarily. We don't have a ladder. We don't have anyone interacting with the sharks. We have people in the water, in the cage, in the safety of the cage. But again, as far as touching the animal, getting the opportunity to approach it or be approached, it's mainly, in my opinion, why we don't see that behavior is because of the difference of being in the cage and being cageless. We don't have somebody, a living person, at the base of a ladder, putting off more electrolysis, whatever it may be. And to answer your question, that's not a behavior that we typically saw in the past at all or are seeing now.
Thank you. This is another short blurb here, but this is the other thing that is unsettling to me as an ocean dweller, is that these sharks appear to be no longer scared of people, and instead they're quite playful and interested in frolicking. So this is an example of what you can find in great abundance online. Let me just clarify, these are all cageless operators. These videos that I'm playing aren't, and this is all from, I believe, this year, possibly last year as well, but it's just one season. But it's just not something I've ever seen before. Like, I don't know how to say it any other way than this is really scary to me, because there's a whole lot of tiger sharks in one spot, and normally it's just one, you know. And the things that they're doing is, I don't know, I guess people have different opinions of what's appropriate behavior to treat an animal, how you treat an animal. Like, I think this is pretty exceptional. Like, this is captivating to me. Seeing somebody handle a shark that big, that's a man-eater like that, that's just unbelievable. You know, I don't know. It's like, if I saw somebody, you know, doing something cool with a bunch of bears, like polar bears, I'd probably have the same reaction, I think. You know, I certainly wouldn't be stoked when they get eaten, you know, but there was that couple that was living in the wilderness for years with bears, right? And then eventually the scientists were right. They got eaten. Both of them did. So and it's going to end right here. This is something a dive with 9 tiger sharks. So that's straight off their, off their website. I just took it off. It's part of the marketing, I think, of this industry, is to showcase this stuff. And it's actually, I was talking to a graduate student that said the development of a GoPro camera was paramount in the development of this and many other sport industries and things. I'm going to turn this over to John. We're going to jump into questions in just a bit, but John and then Dr. Dolmeyer is going to say some stuff, and then we're going to let you guys go to town on all these guys.
Aloha. Can you hear me okay? Hey, aloha, everybody. I'm John Titchen. I appreciate Robin's introduction. I think the only person who really knows me is my daughter and family. But I was the chief lifeguard for the city and county of Honolulu for 5 years. Before that, I retired from the Coast Guard. So please don't beat me up. I'm the token government guy, I think, on this panel. For lack of a better way of saying it, I think I ended up having knowledge of maritime. I was a maritime first responder, so I think that's where I fit into the panel. I want to thank Robin and host for this event. As a junior Coast Guard officer, I remember working with Robin's dad and Alan. Appreciate what Gabe's doing with host now. And Neil and everybody else. I think these forums are super critical for public safety in our community. One of the things I advocated for when I was the chief of ocean safety was a commission for the new Department of Ocean Safety. And the reason for that is this: to have the discussion of people. I'm the least knowledgeable person on this panel, guaranteed. I guarantee it, with respect to sharks. But I have been a maritime first responder basically my whole life, and while I've never actually responded to a shark attack myself, I have supervised those who have. I'm sure Mark has. A lot of famous lifeguards that have come through ocean safety, and certainly in the Coast Guard. I was fortunate to be stationed in a lot of places around the continental United States. Loved coming home. Again, I'm the least knowledgeable person, but I would appreciate being able to participate in a discussion with respect to public safety. I don't know if this is an issue, but I'll tell you this: having the discussion now to determine whether or not it is an issue or will be an issue is very unique and unusual. Government doesn't do this. Government solves the 2025 problem with a 1996 solution. That's been my experience my whole life, and it was frustrating for sure to watch it at the city and county. The Coast Guard's a lot more nimble with respect to emergency response. But again, I don't know a lot about I don't know anything really about behavior. But like Robin, having grown up in the ocean here, I have not seen that many sharks. I think I've surfed with Cully a few times. I don't remember ever hearing someone talk about swimming and diving with this many sharks. So again, I just want to thank host for this forum. I think these discussions in the community are awesome. I look forward to, if there are any questions related to the public safety aspect, but I'll leave you with this and say that government's response typically to a problem is to rush in 5 years after something has happened. And so having the discussion ahead of time with respect to what may or may not be done with regulation, I'm not surprised the state backed out. I was pleased that they were going to participate, but this discussion is probably ahead of any real dialogue. And with all due respect to any victims, and I've known victims of shark attacks, I knew a fatal shark attack victim. With all due respect to victims, unfortunately the regulations are written in blood. That's an expression in government, is that something critical or crucial or tragic has to happen before government will respond. So again, appreciate hosts bringing this panel together. You've got people in the industry, you've got experts who know about shark behavior, those who have documented them, and I'm sure this will end up being a lively discussion this afternoon. So thanks.
Okay, well, that's the first time for me seeing that kind of footage, so I'm gonna need some time to process all of that. So what I did want to come here and talk to you guys about is what I've seen growing up on the North Shore, Hawai'i, just living in the water. I've seen this evolution of the shark tours from the very beginning. I've seen the ocean, shoreline to pelagics, but mostly bottom fishing throughout this entire time series. And I gotta say, I don't know if it's number one right now or the first thing, I don't know if it's an environmental reason, but there are way, way, way more sharks than there ever have been, at least in human occupation in Hawaii, I would assume. And you couple that with the progression and the evolution of the shark tour industry. Feeding sharks is a dumb thing to do. We've already seen the behavioral changes. When sharks associate humans and boats as food, it not only puts a target on the shark, it puts everybody else's lives and livelihoods in jeopardy. It's a no-brainer. The last time I remember ever having a discussion about this was 2010, I believe, and the state really didn't want to do anything about it. In fact, 2002, I think I think it was Senate Bill 2613 saying, "Oh, let's try to solve this with regulation rather than, or administratively rather than legislation, and let's wait till 2050 to talk about it again." You really need 48 friggin' years to look at the evolution that's happened in, like you said, just a couple of years. So anyway, okay, put that aside. I'll try to stay on topic. So, I'm sure everybody else is going to come up with good solutions to stay safe in the water. So I figured the best thing for me to talk about is what I know best when you're on a boat. Because if your boat has an engine and you're out on the ocean, do not put anything in the water that you want to keep. We used to wash hands over the side of the boat. Don't do that anymore. We do not. That's a rule when people come on my boat. Do not wash your hands in the water. Scoop water with a bucket, wash your hands in that bucket, change the water frequently. For the ladies out there, don't hang on to the side of the boat and use the restroom. Find a bucket someplace, or I don't know, hold it. If from what I've seen, you need to be able to see all around you and really clean water to fend off a shark if it does that kind of stuff to you. And anything hanging over the side, even in air, I've had a shark come up and try to grab a lead that I was holding over the side of the boat ready to drop. And, the biggest problem that I see too is that sharks, I'm guessing almost all species are migratory, they move around. If they're just passing through Hawai'i and getting fed and trained to associate humans with food, and they're not feeding them enough to keep them happy and keep them well fed, they're going to move on and take what they learned with them. So I'm already seeing sharks exhibiting the same behavior that I've noticed in Haleiwa that started there, where you'll have 5 to 10 sharks right behind your boat, just waiting to be fed on the surface. That's not natural. That behavior started a long time ago with the feeding of the sharks for commercial purposes, shark tours. But I mean, what we just saw is that's a whole different level, and I'm pretty terrified. I don't see too many tiger sharks, especially doing that. I've got a lot. If anybody has any questions or wants to know any facts, I'm not good with the law things. Trying to remember Senate bills and House bills or whatnot, but anything else, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask. Thanks.
So I think we're going to jump into what probably most of you guys came here, I think, to see. I'm going to ask Dr. Domeyer to take over, and he's going to tell us a few things that we didn't know about.
This on? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Michael Domeyer. I'm actually a colleague of Kim's. I'm also a shark researcher. A little closer, like that? Okay. I'm also a shark researcher. I do very little work in Hawaii, mostly on the mainland and in Mexico, and primarily on great white sharks. But I want to start by saying I'm not anti-shark tourism. In fact, I've done almost all of the famous shark dives around the world. These are pictures that I took on my own trips. In fact, on the right there, it's my wife with a tiger shark in Tiger Beach. She's sitting here in the audience somewhere. And that's a oceanic white tip, which reminds me of Kona. That's where I live. And we don't have the same situation on the Big Island that you have here. We don't have people complaining about seeing a lot of tiger sharks, sandbars. Like, I've never seen a sandbar shark. I've done a lot of diving there. I rarely see sharks. I've seen more monk seals, aside from right in front of the harbor at the Green Buoy, where fishermen fillet their catches, or they dump the marlin that they've weighed. You can regularly see tiger sharks because they're being fed there. They're getting, the word we use is habituated to the site because they're being fed. We have had this past year, seems like an increase in interactions of oceanic white tips offshore with the marlin fishermen, which I think is actually a good thing. This shark's been wiped out, like 99% of its population in the Pacific, so they've been hammered very hard by commercial fisheries. I'm not sure how to make this thing Go to the next slide. This is my study site in Mexico, and I've actually led a lot of shark tourism trips there for my nonprofit to raise money to continue to do research there. That was actually me in the cage. That's a picture I took at the last second. Bobby, can you hit enter? And I think it's important to point out that scientists actually have a close relationship with shark tourism industries in certain parts of the world. And in fact, I depended on them at this site. I started working there in 1999. There was nobody there. I was really one of the first people to realize there were a lot of white sharks there. But soon after, this white shark cage diving industry evolved. And eventually, they became very important to me. Because I started a photo ID program where we cataloged every shark that we saw. They had very unique markings. And over time, over decades actually, of collecting all the pictures from these boats, we were able to come up with a population estimate for the sharks that visit this site. And in fact, we did two. We did like 10 years apart, and able to show that the shark population is increasing. That's a very important thing in science. So shark tourism can be valuable to scientists by giving them a very predictable, easy access to animals that normally, where can you go and see a white shark? And they're not that common. It's just kind of going on its own. No, are you doing that? No, go back. I'll tell you when to go. Go ahead. The next one, Robin. So white sharks do come to Hawaii. And in fact, this is one. Kimberly Jeffrey sent me this picture that she took in January 2019. This shark was feeding on a dead sperm whale. And a lot of people probably remember that event. And it was exciting to me because it turns out that shark is in my catalog from Guadalupe Island. We've known this shark for more than 20 years. And then she actually took pictures of more than one. So hit the button again, please. And again. There we go. So a few days later, I see this. So that very peaceful scene of a shark feeding, on a sperm whale became a zoo of a massive amount of people out there doing this sort of stuff. To me, this was alarming. This is not a safe animal really to be swimming with. I don't know if these are all locals that just wanted to go out and have their picture taken with a white shark, or if there were some of these boats took tourists there. Taking tourists there to me would be exceptionally reckless. So this activity actually got me thinking about this shark industry in Oahu, even though it has really nothing to do with me. And what's really happening. Go ahead and hit. So the legislation, I wanted to know what it was. I can't read all the text on that. But basically, I think it was in 2002, legislation finally occurred here to regulate this industry. And at that time, there were almost no votes. And you may remember a guy named Jimmy Hall. He was one of the people that started this whole thing. And then his wife contacted me because he'd passed away by the time this was happening. she wanted me to help lobby for legislation that would keep her in business. But long story short, the legislation banned the feeding of sharks for the purpose of tourism. And what I'm a bit shocked by is everyone here is talking about this industry feeding sharks like it's not a big deal. It's against the law. Absolutely against the law. And the reason why that bothers me is because if the state intended to allow these boats to feed sharks, they would have put a lot more regulations in place to keep people safe. But the law is don't feed them. If you don't feed them, you won't have this crazy interactions. But we're having it, and it's putting people at risk. So one of the things that happened when this 2002 legislation occurred is the boats go, okay, well, we're just going to go outside state waters. Outside 3 miles, we'll do whatever the heck we want because the state has no jurisdiction. Go ahead and hit enter. So in 2006, the federal government fixed that. So when the Magnuson-Stevenson Act, so I'm not going to go into what, it's a Fisheries Act, was re-upped, they put language in saying nowhere in the Pacific outside of Hawaii can you feed sharks for tourism. So a lot of people in this room might think it's still legal to go outside 3 miles and feed sharks. It is not. 2006, on a federal level, fix that. Go ahead, Robin. This picture is from a video that I saw in 2019, and it made me realize the sharks are being fed. I mean, I'm a scientist. I've dove with sharks around the world. I've caught sharks, tagged sharks. You never see sharks like this at the surface, right behind the boat, for no reason. Would you agree, Kim? Yeah. So at this point, I decided to write a letter to the DLNR. I think go ahead and enter. Oh, actually, it was a video. Okay, so hit it again, Robin. I'm sorry. That was a social media post. So that was the first time I kind of poked the bear over here. And people on the North Shore were like, who is this guy? He started like, all of a sudden saying something that talking about something that nobody wants to talk about. But behind the scenes, I started getting messages from a lot of past and current employees of these operators. And they were afraid to talk because many of these operators make them sign a non-disclosure agreement. They would tell me off the record, we are feeding these sharks every single day. That's how we're making this happen. But don't tell anybody, and I won't tell anybody else. And I explained to them, I go, look, an NDA does not protect the person that made you sign it from illegal activities. But the letters that these people get from attorneys scared them. They have not much money. It's very effective. But if you're watching this now and you work for these companies, the NDA doesn't mean anything. The activity is illegal. You can talk about it all you want. They can't do anything to you. So I wrote this letter to DLNR. I just said, hey, there's reckless and illegal shark diving out there, and it's a matter of time before we're going to see an accident in Hawaii related to this industry. And I asked them either enforce current regulations or push for new legislation that legalizes it and puts in some reasonable regulations for people's safety, because this sort of thing does happen in other parts of the world. And yes, there are sometimes accidents, but they're infrequent. Go ahead, Robin. In 2019, just 5 months after I wrote that letter, there was a shark bite. I'm a scientist, so we're not supposed to say shark attack. We're supposed to say shark bite. There was a shark bite off Haleiwa, and I don't think it was actually during one of these commercial shark tourism activities. It was sort of after hours. It was with people who are directly related to the industry. They went to the same site to do some kind of photo shoot. But they were very concerned about the PR, so they called into 911 and said, oh, somebody accidentally got hit by a spear gun. But paramedics weren't that stupid. They go, that's a shark bite. So when that happened, I wrote another letter to DLNR. I said, hey, what I told you is going to happen, it happened. Fortunately, the person isn't seriously injured. So let's either, again, enforce the regulations or make new ones. I wrote these to Susan Case, who was at the time the director. I never got an answer. I eventually sent an email to other people high up in DLNR, and I did start getting some back and forth. Eventually, they told me, and I started sending them videos that people gave me of chumming, evidence of chumming. They said, we don't believe this really constitutes chumming. I said, well, who have you talked to? Did you talk to Kim Holland? I didn't get an answer. So something else I learned, though, the penalties for breaking these laws are trivial. I think like a slap on the wrist, a couple $100 fine. So the legislation needs to fix that. There needs to be significant penalties for breaking these laws. And also DLNR complained about it's expensive to do enforcement. We don't know how to do it. Go ahead. I'm not sure where I'm going now, Robin. But so since I wrote the first letter, there have been 6 shark bites at these sites of Hawai'i, all having to do with this swimming with sharks tourism industry. I think it's interesting too. I'm not sure who puts these records in. This is off the state, I think, DLNR website. But you see, every one of them says provoked, provoked, provoked. What does that mean? What did they learn that made them say that it was provoked? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the most recent one that was in January. Go ahead. This is Gavin Newland. He actually contacted me. It's a small world. This kid actually worked for part-time with some friends of ours on the North Shore. Very small world. And this is a picture of him, really young, strapping kid. He got a job with one of these shark tourism boats. There was a day when they were chumming, and sometimes, like at Galapagos Island where I worked on white sharks, the chumming is so much that you get these massive schools of bait fish. Because they get all the little pieces. And sometimes when those bait fish get spooked, they hide under the boat. That happened on that day when he was out. All the bait fish started sucking underneath the boat. And then the sharks started getting a little spunky and making runs at him. And the captain said, we're done. Everyone out of the water. The last tourist in the water somehow got fouled up in the safety line behind the boat. Gavin was on the boat, so he jumped in the water to help her. He got her on the boat, and something happened, and the bait fish just came out from under the boat and surrounded him as he's swimming to the boat now with his head out of the water, and he gets bit. He gets bit badly. Go ahead. Robin, hit. It's graphic, but I think you need to see this. He got bit in the left forearm. Go ahead, hit the next one. I asked him a couple questions. I asked him, first of all, did you have any training for this job? He said none. No training at all. I asked him if there was chumming. He said every day. I said, was there a first aid kit on the boat? He said no. The legislation needs to fix these things. If we're going to have this shark industry, we need to put rules in place that protect the people that are on these trips. They have to have a tourniquet on board. Fortunately, somebody took their wetsuit, made a tourniquet. Unfortunately, Gavin, that's a serious injury. It severed every extensor tendon on his left arm. They were unable to repair them right away. I severed an extensor tendon on my left thumb. And at the time, the surgeon said, I got to fix this within 2 weeks or it's really not that fixable. The result's not going to be very well. I mean, unfortunately, unless the surgeons can produce some miracles, he's going to pretty much have a cup holder for a left hand for the rest of his life. People wonder, why are you bugging this industry? This is why. I feel like if people had listened to me at the state level 6 years ago, this would have never happened. I think I might be done. Oh, no, I have one more thing to say. So, yeah, if you Google redirect shark, you're going to get all of these videos like what Robin was showing. And a lot of them are from Hawai'i with tiger sharks. And the people that are in these, they say they're doing it to
teach the public of how to avoid sharks in case they ever encounter one. And I will tell you, I've never had to redirect a wild shark in the water, excepting for when I was on sites that they feed sharks. That's the only time. And tourists shouldn't ever be trying to redirect sharks. Or they'll say, I'm this shark because I want to teach you about sharks. There's other ways to do that. I don't know if any of you heard about the most recent fatality at Tiger Beach. Tiger Beach was my picture of my wife was at Tiger Beach. It happened a few months ago. There was a group in the water there. A tiger shark was redirected. Remember when I said, watch their eyes. The eyes close, and often then they snap. This tiger shark was redirected. It closed its eyes, it snapped, and it got this woman right in the arm. The thing about tiger sharks, when they bite, they don't let go. White sharks do let go. I mean, if you're bit by a white shark, you're much more likely to survive than bit by a tiger shark. They're not going to let go. They're probably going to take that limb. If you're snorkeling, you're probably going to drown. Well, the woman, the entire group freaked out, and it's very shallow water. It's like 15, 20 feet deep. The whole group scattered. The woman's left there. She panics. She starts pulling her arm. The shark gets the arm. Then there's a lot of blood. She bolts for the surface, and like a horror movie, she's eaten like piranhas eating a chicken bone in the Amazon. The only thing they got back from her was her BCD of her diving. And it wasn't just the tiger sharks that went for it. It was also, there's Caribbean reef sharks around them. And all the sharks just went in total frenzy and ate her in front of her friends. We don't need that to happen in Hawaii. Robin, that's all I got.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor's got to leave in about 30 minutes, so I wanted to open this up to the floor. And if you guys have any questions of the panelists, sure you do. Now's your time. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Where did I not go? Oh, George.
What am I doing?
I totally forgot. I was going to ask George to touch on something that I just thought was pretty interesting. George compiled a list a while back of every shark attack that's ever been in Hawaii. And it's published. You can check it out. It's pretty neat. But there's in there, there's a description of an incident that took place in 1779, where a Master Chief, I believe, was entering in his journal what he observed before they'd even made landfall. They were in their vessel and they're watching, they called them back then Indians, approach the vessel. And one of the things that he noted was that these people were swimming in a manner that they didn't care. They were swimming around these sharks, and it was not a big deal. They didn't seem to be bothered by it at all. Similar to what we've been watching. Then I believe that somebody took the initiative to shoot one of these sharks because they thought it was a threat or it was in the process of something. And the observation was that the Indians didn't care about that either. Didn't seem bothered by it. And I just thought that was interesting that they wouldn't take issue with it. That it was something that they saw as being just the way it's supposed to be. I don't know why that would be, but I wanted to ask Dr. Boaz to expand on that and give us his 2 cents as to why he thinks that was what they were doing at that time.
Okay. It's still Mr. Balaz. If there's any university out there that would like to give me an honorary doctorate at 82 years of age, I will not turn it down. Kim, nice to see you again and work with you. Kim and I first met in 1974, thereabouts at Coconut Island. So from my perspective, there were significant things that happened in history. First, saying that my wife and I landed here in Hawaii in January of '65, and we've been here ever since. So I do go back, and so far my memory's not too bad. Commissions on shark attacks, and by the way, we have reformed the topic of this entire seminar to shark cages and shark tours, as opposed to the broader issue of, I still use the word of attacks. I remember about 15 years ago when the news media, the newspapers, everybody said, oh no, it's not an attack. It's a bite. Euphemism. Sorry. In the late, I was saying a commission, names like Bill Patey are fresh in my mind. Names like, bless her soul and her poor family, Mrs. Marty Morrell at Oluwalu, who didn't fare very well from a attack, which could have been a white shark. And I based that on the fact that I read her autopsy report, and it was very sad. There are names like Spence Weaver Corporation, Billy Weaver in the late 50s off Kailua. People came to arms at that time about sharks, viewing them as enemies. Something that I did maybe in the very beginning, but I certainly don't view them as enemies any longer. Large tiger sharks, my specialty is sea turtles. I became interested in tiger sharks because the shape of the tiger shark tooth can saw. It's not pointed like a white. It can saw by undulating its head back and forth. And once it gets a perch or a grip on a sea turtle shell, if it can sink in hard enough and then shake, it will saw right through it. The large tiger sharks are one of the main predators of sea turtles. In the past, when I first started out at Coconut Island, HIMB, Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology, with Kim as a buddy out there and a fellow researcher of something I knew nothing about. I had a student named Alan Cam. He's still around. I'd like to look him up one of these days if anybody knows where he's at. I'm still in touch with his former wife, Thea Johannes Cam. But Alan was a youngster then, and I wasn't too old either. And I sent him to the library to start looking up cases of fishermen who had caught turtles accidentally or on purpose. And he came back with reports in microfiche from Hamilton Library, microfiche before the computer age. And he started coming back with cases of people parts being found in tiger sharks in addition to turtle parts. And that got me interested in that aspect. The evolution of the story is in the mid-1970s, Alan and I published the first that I was aware of, still holds this case, the first compilation of shark attacks in the Hawaiian Islands. And that was in the illustrious journal, and I say that seriously even though we were off topic, the Elepaio, the Journal of the Hawaii Audubon Society. Well, one thing went to another, and George Burgess asked me to be the shark attack representative for Hawaii, and I did the best I could, Alan and I, putting together cases that we came across. The devil is in the detail, though. Cases, what are cases? What should be documented and what shouldn't? The state and some of the researchers at Coconut Island at the time, Brad Weatherby, I consider him a friend and a colleague, but we had disagreements. And there was somebody else that I'm blacking out on the name right now, sorry, that you shouldn't be putting this case or that case in there, even though you're qualifying it as possible, likely, suspicious. In 1995, I stopped compiling because a fellow by the name of Randy Hoenbrink, which some of you know, was doing it for the state of Hawaii, and the state was calculating it differently than I had been doing it. And I said, hey, I'm a turtle biologist, not a shark biologist. Let's, I bow to your wisdom. If that's how you want to do it, you do it. But my era was documented in two books, Hawaii's Tigers of the Sea by Jim Borg, who was a reporter for the Advertiser. And there's a whole chapter going up to 1993 of the shark attacks as I viewed them, as I said it's my responsibility. This is how I've tabulated it. And my good friend, who I haven't seen in years, but I know he's still in Hawaii, Sharks of Hawaii, Their Biology and Cultural Significance, Leighton Taylor, the former director of the Waikiki Aquarium. Anybody knows where he's at, tell him Balaz wants to have lunch with him. And that's my history, pretty much so. I would say a word about feeding sharks. Although we disagreed on a number of things, back then we could disagree in good spirit. And Uncle Charlie Maxwell from Maui was one of those folks that we could hug and really be happy to see one another and then disagree on various things. Back then he was keen on cooking turtles, and I wasn't so keen on cooking turtles. He passed away. I'm still here. And I'm keen on Hawaiian traditional cooking of turtles if a Hawaiian ancestry person wants to do that. There are enough turtles out there, no matter what you've been hearing, to assure a sustainable, low harvest, maybe 10 a year, 50 a year, so that Hawaiian people can practice what they practiced long before the U.S. stole the islands from them. Okay? Sorry, I know some of you. I love turtles too. I've got them tattooed all over my leg, on my back. That's why I've never been bitten by a tiger shark. It's protected me. So there was the commission with Bill Patey, and what I was saying was Uncle Charlie Maxwell used to go feed the sharks. It was his amakua. Not the turtle, the honu. He wanted to eat it, and yet the sharks, do not kill the sharks. And I think it was the Hawaiian cultural spirit belief that's still even stronger now from Uncle Charlie that stopped all of the killing of sharks in Hawaii. You know, in the late 60s, it was the Shark Research and Control Program. John Naughton, who was a spokesman for NOAA for many years on tiger sharks, he was a student back then under, I'm trying to think of the person that ran it, I can't. Later on, in the 70s, there was a shark control program. Killing sharks there was the Kamaboko over in Haleiwa, and a bit after Billy Weaver's tragic case, people started thinking, do we want to eat shark if the shark has been eating people? And my recollection is it went out of business. There was a Kamaboko factory in Haleiwa that was processing sharks. So I suspect, and Kim has somewhat reaffirmed that for me, that sharks are in healthy numbers in the Hawaiian Islands these days. There's no decline known. They are fulfilling their ecological role. And one of their ecological roles is to trim down the turtle population. And that's good. That's good because there are places in Hawaii where the turtles are at or exceeded carrying capacity. Layman term, as I am as a non-PhD, too many turtle, George. The sharks will balance things out if we allow nature to take its course. Wow, I've talked too much. Okay. Kim, correct any of the BS that I've said that you don't agree with. I love you, buddy. Robbie,
Thank you, George. So we got 15 minutes, I think, before we're going to lose Dr. Dolmeyer here. So I wanted to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. I believe Andrea was first.
Hi, my name is Andy, and I've worked as a shark diver out in Hawaii for like 7+ years, and I'm like stand like this so you can see me. And I have a background in marine biology. I studied at University of Miami for 2 years with their shark research and conservation lab, working on my master's. So I've spent quite a lot of time studying and working with sharks. And there are definitely responsible freediving operations out of the harbor in Haleiwa, and there's definitely operators that are not. And I just think when we're considering legislation, it's definitely like really important to look at those that really care about the sharks and really do actually implement safety training. Like, for example, you were saying there was no training for this guy that was put in a horrible situation with the photos we were shown. And there are operators that are out there just for money, and they don't care about the sharks. There isn't any training that goes into. The last thing we want, why would we, want our industry to have shark bites? Obviously, that's not going to help business. That's not going to help anything that we do. So I don't know what kind of permitting or training or what that would look like, but I think that would definitely be something that we could have as like part of the discussion when looking at the freediving aspect of the cageless shark swimming here in Hawaii. So there's ways to do it that are better for the sharks and better for people. And then there's other ways, obviously, that other operators aren't following those guidelines or kind of way that we like to at least implement.
If shark bans work.
Question was, do shark bans work? Shark bans being a deterrent for... Anybody want to take that? Oh.
If they do work, it only at very close range. If they do work, it's only at very close range. Since I have the microphone, if I might, I'd like to back away from the shark tour thing as George was going. One of the things I think we should remember is that the number of shark attacks in Hawaii statewide is basically flat line. There is no significant increase in the number of shark attacks since shark tours have been in operation, and there's no difference in the more or less random distribution of where shark attacks do occur. Statistically, Maui has more attacks per population than any of the other islands, probably because of the depth of the water around Maui Nui. But I think it's important, there's no doubt that there is room for control and regulation of the shark tour operators, but if you want to extrapolate it to whether or not those operators are increasing the risk to ocean users that are not right in the immediate vicinity of the shark tour operations, there's no evidence to suggest that that's the case. The other thing that I would like to say about the government stepping in, one of the things that did happen back in the 70s or 80s when that shark commission was in place was when my group first started showing that from tracking the animals that they were always on the move, that they weren't just going to one end of the beach, turning around and coming back again, but you could tag a fish off of Waikiki today and tomorrow it would be on Penguin Bank and the day after that it would be on Maui. Based on that, the state of Hawaii deliberately stopped condoning shark calls. So there was, in fact, a feedback loop where the government at that time, atypically perhaps, and unofficially, took science and turned it into policy quite quickly.
Anyone else?
I just had a question, if any of you could speak to the increase of presence of shark sightings near shore on the South Shore, because I feel like we've seen more activity and more sightings in the last 2 to 3 years.
I'm going to respectfully redirect this to Koli Kamasugi because I know he surfs a lot. What else is on?
I mean, personally, I haven't seen a huge increase, but there were a couple attacks, one at Kualo. Maybe that was the only one. But the one that concerns me is a friend of mine was putting in divers off of Hawaii Kai, just beginner divers, and out of nowhere, a tiger popped its head up on the swim step, and I can't help but think that shark learned that behavior on the North Shore. Because it's not a natural behavior.
I want to address that too. I was the chief of ocean safety for the city from 2018 to 2024. We did notice the lifeguards. There's about 300 lifeguards for the island around in the different districts. We noticed a significant number of increased reports of shark sightings and interactions. And I think anecdotally, when I looked at it, what I saw immediately were more people reporting them. And there are new activities that people are doing. If you foil, you're 6 feet above the water. If you're on a paddleboard or any other kind of activity where you're up out of the water, you'll see a lot more under the water. I think they've always been there. I think these people, these scientists and these experts will tell you that. From a public safety standpoint, there was no doubt. There are more sightings. I think it's more people doing different activities that allow them to see them. I think they've always been there. I want to just address, I think it was Andy from the industry. You nailed it. That is what, so most of the maritime activities around the United States are self-regulated by industry. There isn't enough government workers. There aren't enough government workers around to do the inspections. Everybody knows the law. You have to have a first aid kit. You have to have a qualified lifeguard on a six-pack. You have to be regulated by the Coast Guard. They come out and do that. They inspect the vessel. Everybody's got to have a PFD. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows what's not being done by certain parts of the industry. Industry in almost every activity, kite surfing, almost anything, picket, parasailing, anything you want. Industry wants safe practices because you're not going to get customers if you don't. So, earlier I beat up on government a little bit because from where I sit, it lumbers along and moves slowly. I remember the shark calls. I remember a time when nobody thought twice about that. Now we know a lot more about the environment. Ruth's here to tell us a little bit more about the natural environment and what government should and can be doing. But to me, it comes down to the industry. Done right, done well, with safe practices. I mean, you want people to have a good time.
Oh, hi. My name is Ann Martin. I'm a social worker, but I I love snorkeling and I volunteer at Hanauma Bay. My husband's an ecologist, so I kind of got, thinking that way. But so I have two questions. One is, have there been any shark attacks recently on these tours where they're chumming the sharks? But my real question is anybody looking at alternative reasons why there may be more sharks around? Climate change, warming oceans, different things happening on coral reefs or different populations of fish or turtles or whatever. So is anybody looking at that as an alternative explanation to just too much chumming? And also, those videos, why aren't the sharks eating those people?
I'm going to defer to one of the doctors, I think.
Any of our panelists?
With regard to the shark populations, there's been a lot of shark protections put in place. The ones in Hawaii are actually quite recent. But I think the shark populations could very well be increasing naturally. They were reduced by the lack of shark regulation. Like white shark populations went down significantly, and they are not coming back. But these sharks reproduce very slowly. They don't have that many babies. They reproduce later in life. It's not like a dorado or a mahi that is spawning within 6 months of hatching. It could be, in the case of white sharks, it could be 15 to 20 years old before they have their first batch of 10 or 12 babies. So protections can be put in place, and it takes a long time for them to come back. And with regard to all the people in the water and then one's getting bit, those sharks aren't used to eating things like that. And when they do get bit, it's an accident. But the more you put these sharks into a feeding mode, the more likely you're going to have an accident. And I think some of the concern from the locals is that area now is sort of like daredevil to go in the water. The area that these tourism boats use, the sharks have been habituated to that site from being fed.
Was that the? What was your other question? Sorry, I had a question for him next, but go ahead. Oh, okay. I think the first one was what there was one, like how many shark attacks have there been? There's been 2 so far this year at the shark feeding stations. Yeah, cageless. So, Dr. Domai, I do have a question. So, like your shark tour operations in Guadalupe were no chumming, no feeding?
They allowed limited chumming. And actually, I was not a shark tour operator. I just chartered one trip per year and would bring a group of donors on. So I had nothing to do with how the trips were run. The regulations allowed you to have like a tuna carcass in the water, but you really weren't supposed to feed them. But quite honestly, all those boats really chummed more than they were supposed to. The entire thing's been shut down now. The Mexican government shut it down for a number of reasons. I was at a white shark international symposium actually it's been 2 years ago now, and a Mexican scientist gave a talk on why it was shut down, and there were a number of reasons. Too much chumming was one. These Instagram type people getting out of the cages and swimming around with them was another reason. And then there was some concern that the shark tourism industry took over the northern bay of Guadalupe Island, which also there's a resident pod of beaked whales. And there was some concern that all the noise from these boats could be affecting the beaked whales. So I don't know when and if that island will ever reopen. I think, the aquarium fishery here was shut down very quickly, just like that, with public pressure, a lot of lobbying, quite honestly, a lot of untruths. I mean, from my perspective, it was one of the most sustainable fisheries we had in Hawaii. And it was shut down, and the state required the industry to produce an environmental impact statement. How come this industry's never had to go through that sort of regulatory process? I mean, I think because the rules say no feeding. If you're not feeding, you're not going to be having much of an impact. But they are feeding, so they are having an impact. That should require an environmental impact study.
That's precisely why I asked, because I have no problem with the industry itself. I got a lot of friends that actually work for them, and I'm happy for them because they make good money. And it's the act of feeding which is changing the behaviors and affecting everybody else's life. And another thing too is, I heard a question earlier about, what was asked? Oh, why haven't there been more shark attacks? Well, we've adjusted our lives and what we do, because, every day you're on the ocean, you observe something, you learn something. We're not fishing like we used to fish. We're not doing the activities like we used to do and like how we used to do them. When you see the dangers, we react to keep ourselves safe. So, I mean, that's just, the question came up earlier. So I just wanted to say how much, I've changed my life around this activity.
I can say that if they followed the rules and did not feed the sharks, they would have no business because the sharks would not be there. And I can say that, there is a white shark cage diving boats that go to the Farallon Islands in California. There's a lot of white sharks there. They do not allow any chumming at all. They put observers on board. And if you read the reviews for those trips, people say, don't go. It's awful. You don't even see a shark, you freeze your butt off. Over time, if people stop feeding at this site, the sharks would move on.
All right, real quick, I have 2 questions coming in online. One was, does the presence of sharp projections under a board such as a hydrofoil confuse or deter a shark? Anybody want to? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to touch on what he was saying as far as the shark tourism industry and having to feed. Like I said, I've been doing it for 12 years. That was after it became illegal to feed. As much as it is almost every time we see sharks, there's days that there's one, there's days that there's 10. 10's a great number, one's a low number. And unfortunately, as you're running a business, you can't guarantee nature. And if you're feeding, you can have a better chance of guaranteeing nature. But for those that are following the rules and doing everything by the book, you can just look at the numbers as far as how many refunds we actually have to hand out. And people do still enjoy the tour. Some of them say we don't need a refund. That was a great time. We learned. The whole point of the shark tour industry from when I started was to educate not just the tourists, but also a lot of the local people that come out with us. So we all have this image of what a shark is capable of doing, and we all have this anxiety or fear of what could happen. Are those possibilities possible? Absolutely. But there's a lot of things that you can do to put yourself in a better scenario. And for surfing, when you take out a surfer or, anyone really, and you take them out there and you show them the sharks for what they really are in a respectable way, human in cage, shark not being touched, outside of cage, it changes their perspective. And then it allows us to teach them on the importance of sharks. Because we naturally have this image due to Hollywood, social media, that, you see a shark, it's going to be biting the cage. It's going to make an attempt to get you. Like you were saying, they're there every day. If they wanted people, Waikiki would be a buffet line, all the flavors of the world for them. But that's not the case, because plain and simple is they don't eat humans naturally. They do make mistakes, all of those things. Now, like I was saying when I first started, the numbers, especially with the tiger sharks, we barely had any. I would see one or two a year, and the other company, I have my partner, he didn't see one for years. He was like, dude, I'm so jealous, can't believe you just saw one. Now, there's no denying that has changed tremendously. And I'm not just here to speak, I am here to speak for the entire industry, but there's a big difference in between not just cage and cageless, but who's doing it, whether we're talking just cage or just cageless. Now, like Andy was saying, or she touched on, is the importance is if you are going to be putting these people in the water, there absolutely should be some sort of regulation that teaches these people not only how to keep the tourists safe, but themselves. I can't even speak on much of that because I've never done the cageless. I've only done the caged. And if we're going, this whole talk is about safety. How do we know if it's getting worse? Statistics, right? Bottom line. The two, or now there's three, but the shark cage diving businesses, Hawaii Shark Encounters, North Shore Shark Adventures, and now Haleiwa Shark Tours, if you just look at the statistics on safety and what has happened during the tours and from what's happened recently, you're better off going on a shark tour with us than you are going scuba diving off of Waikiki and getting left out in the middle of nowhere like just recently happened. So it's, again, because the word shark is thrown into what I do, people naturally just go, oh my gosh, it's a dangerous job, all these things. But when you're doing it respectfully and responsibly, and I'm not saying I have any sort of degree that gave me the right to be out there and know what I'm doing, but over time with the experience, I have picked up a few things. Now, again, caged. When it comes to having to redirect the animals, all those things, that's not my line of work, and that's not anything that I've ever had to teach my employees, my friends, or a customer to do. In the case that a 15-foot tiger shark approaches you, lock your elbow, make eye contact, and as much as it might sound like I'm speaking down on them, those tours in some ways are also very important, because what are the odds that you're swimming outside? Did you bring your cage with you today? You didn't. So you're there cageless. So these tours are beneficial as far as educating people, but also say you are in this situation where you are approached by a tiger shark. Realistically, if that shark wanted you, you probably weren't even going to know he was there. And there's nothing you can do to stop it, right? But there's things that you can do to prevent it or have better odds of stopping it. Eye contact, all these things that we don't get to teach on our caged shark dive, We do end up explaining it, but we don't teach it because we're not in the water showing the people what to necessarily do. Now, that's just my touch on the subject of safety. Everything that has happened out of Haleiwa has not been on a caged operation. And I'm not just saying that just to defend what I'm doing, but it's fact, plain and simple. And you play with fire, you're going to get burned. There's no denying that if you swim with the shark every day, or if you swim outside, go looking for bears, there's a chance something could happen. But just like we get in our cars every day, after looking at the news that 2 people just passed on the H3, it's a scary thought and thing that could happen to people. But again, the more people we educate, the more people that will be able to maybe decide, I'm not going to go swimming in this river mouth today, because I know from that shark tour I took that if I'm going to get hunted, it's in this water. And, it could have prevented or saved that person's life. So there are pros to this. It's not just all, the tourism, the money and everything. And that's where Jimmy Hall, who Doctor mentioned earlier, his wife, that was her whole goal. So they ended up being a business, but originally it was friends, it was family, and then it grew. A business idea came about. And so I just wanted to throw that out there, that as far as safety or the amount of shark attacks, and always correct me if I'm wrong, they haven't gone up. There's not more bites. I also remember before there was cageless. I don't know the exact year, but I want to say it was 2015 or 16. We had a lot of bites that year. And that was before there was maybe one cageless operation. And multiple fatalities that year. And that was kind of one of the gnarlier years. Now, since then, the industry has grown, and you could say it's undeniably getting out of hand or unregulated. I lost my train of thought. Plain and simple.
I want to quick respond to that, and I see a couple questions, Robin, and I know you're running out of time too, but just real briefly is to respond to that, to say, numbers are available. UHERO is awesome. As the chief of ocean safety, I work with them a lot I wanted to know who was coming here. I wanted to know, I was responsible for maritime safety for the county. I wanted to know who are the visitors that are coming here, where they're coming from, what kind of swimming ability that they have. And that changes from year to year as our visitors change. It's mostly visitors, who are going on these boats. So, these numbers the state can get very easily, and has already. How many tours are operating each day? How many times do you go out? Most people are going, 2-3 times at the most, right? So, and you only have space for X number of passengers. Correct. You can do simple math to figure out how many people this is affecting. This is happening all over the country with respect to certain industry. How many people are coming specifically for this experience in Hawaii? Because they're doing it in Florida, and they're doing it in all these other countries where, trust me, there are no regulations like what this country has. So just to respond to that, and again, I know there are a couple questions, but to me, this is in the infancy. And there were I'm going to call them attacks. First responders call them attacks. Always have and always will, because it's traumatic. It's someone's worst day, usually. And so from a perspective, again, I want to come back to thanking Gabe and host, Robin especially. Great job on moderating this, and I think your dad would be proud. To me, from a public safety perspective, this is why having these kinds of conversations in the community ahead of time matter, because this is the only way you're going to change government. You're going to get people to do what they should be doing, which Andy pointed out, following existing regulations, which are there for a purpose to keep people safe. Are there outlaws and cowboys? Yeah, in every industry, and every first responder knows that, and they know who's doing it. Anyway, thanks for letting me speak.
Thanks, John.
A quick question for Dr. Holland. You mentioned that the shark bite numbers, shark attack numbers are flatlined. And I noticed when Dr. Dolmeyer did his presentation, he showed that the state is breaking down the shark bites separately, right? So there's like maybe some sort of tag that goes on there for an aggravated versus a non-aggravated attack. I just wanted to confirm, because as the public, I think what we're really interested in knowing is, are there more shark attacks, or are we just hearing about it more? So in total aggravated and not aggravated, are we really are seeing the numbers flatline? There are no more shark attacks than normal?
Those numbers are very easily accessed through the DAR Shark webpage, but there is a slight increase over the last few decades, which is probably more to do with the increased number of people in the water and people going further offshore now than they used to go before. So I think the encounter rate, chances for encounter have gone up. But if you look at it, we're talking about 5 a year, 4 a year, 3 a year, 7 a year, 4 a year. I mean, it's not big numbers, and there's no dramatic increase. That's my only point I'm trying to make. Yeah. I would allow you to go. I mean, I would encourage you to go to the DAR webpage, and you can do your own analysis. Yeah.
George, were you going to say something, George?
Yeah, ask the question, who's doing it for DAR these days? I mentioned Randy Hoenbrink's name. He did it for decades, but I think he quit 10 years ago or more. So he's still there? He's returned, and he does the shark attacks? Is he still the key person? I'll be darned. Okay. Okay. So it gets back to it does make an important. It is important what you're going to define as an attack or a bite. What are you going to put on the list? The way you do it and how you do it. And I'm convinced that back when I quit doing it in 1993, the 2 books that you're talking about, some people didn't like the way I was doing it because I added things that were unknown and said possible or probable. And that wasn't good for tourism. That's what I thought was the case. I said, enough. I'm going back to turtles 100%. But it would be interesting now, and I guess I can go on the website and take a look. How do they define a case that they actually put there, and which cases do they not put there? And okay, thank you.
Thank you. I had a quick question with regard to tracking of the tiger sharks. I would imagine it'd be very difficult to find a tiger shark to then put a receiver on to have them tracked. But if they're appearing at certain locations for the shark tours, perhaps we could work together to be able to tag the sharks since they have a long lifetime so that we could actually base a lot of the research on statistics. And so I guess I just wasn't sure because I had gone on the website and I had only seen a few sharks that were tagged. And so it would be, I think, helpful. And I don't know who can speak to that. I'm sorry, I don't have a specific question. But if anyone is open to talking to how that's done or how you tag a shark, find a shark, I'd appreciate that.
Hi. So we obviously don't do the tagging ourselves, but we have worked with Dr. Carl Myers and a few other people. And, I think the reason that every tiger shark isn't tagged is because it's probably not the cheapest thing to do. So they might target a variety of different sizes. That I don't know. But as far as working with the University of Hawaii or other researchers, they have come out to the sites while we're operating. We've seen them tagging a lot of the Galapagos sharks recently. And they do a cheap, I don't want to say a cheaper route, but a different route as far as the tiger sharks having their satellite tagging, which is obviously much more extensive due to the fact that they pose more of a threat to us. Where the the Galapagos sharks that they've been tagging recently, they're doing internally. It's more a coastal pinger. Whenever they come within a certain distance of the receiver, it lets them know. So we definitely have worked with researchers on, we're not providing anything. We're just out there in the ocean, and they come along that same string that we all, I guess not all, but that the cage shark guys originally started with years back, which also leads me to, what I've seen and have learned and watched grow is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie's been fishing out of Haleiwa a lot longer than I have, and You know, when we first started, it was not when we first started. When we first started going out with the original founder of Hawaii Shark Encounters, and that was Jimmy Hall, it was attempt after attempt after attempt before Uncle Jimmy could show us a shark. You know, so, and that was even with food, right? So that was, I don't know, I was 9, 10 years old, and I'm 30 now. So pretty simple math. 20 years ago, everything was starting, 0 regulations, and what he showed us or found that if he approaches the crab traps, he has better odds of having a shark approach. And sometimes it's quick, sometimes it would take a lot longer, and he'd go and try and find another site or a pinnacle, whatever you want to call it. So from my understanding, you know, that's how they originally got the idea, was like, okay, the crab fisherman's out there, he throws off whatever he doesn't want, his old bait and bycatch, which is not intentionally feeding a shark, it's just fishing. You know, and that's what originally gave Jimmy and Joe the idea of like, oh, we can do something with this, you know. So here we are now 30 years later, and 10 other businesses in the harbor, not much regulation, especially with these new people who have just joined the industry because they can. You know, there's a cap in our harbor now, but another thing that really contributes is, as much as it can be seen as unfortunate that there's multiple companies out there, because obviously the more business there is, the less it's going to come to the originals that started that whole thing, is we all have, or I should say we're all supposed to have, I can't speak for everyone, a permitted mooring out there. And that mooring's out there, it's set, it's a permanent structure that builds life around it. And that life, the algae brings the small fish, bigger fish bring the smaller fish, so on and so forth. So it builds a little ecosystem around itself. And as I'm sure a lot of the doctors know, any healthy ecosystem will usually have a predator to it, right? So in the ocean, it would be a shark. If there's a shark around, you know, it's usually going to stick around a place that's going to provide more opportunity. So from what I've seen, or my understanding was, these structures / crab traps, and the crab traps do move. They're not as permanent as our moorings are. They not only attract that life that I was talking about, but they attract commercial or personal fishermen. And every morning, you know, again, from my experience, we get out there and there's somebody fishing for opelu to go use that fish to go catch something bigger. So this is just from my experience and what I've dealt with and seen in my 12 years of actually working after high school and doing this. So, I mean, we can prove time and time again, and it has gotten easier that we show up, the sharks will come. The people see that sometimes it's before we're even tied up to our cage, there's already one coming up from the depths. Now, there's a lot of ways, because they're opportunistic feeders, to keep them interested. Because if they're not getting anything, why would they stick around? So there's times where you can, like you saw in the video, noises, splashing, being that they're opportunistic, they want to go explore their opportunities. I'll see a leaf 20 yards up ahead of the boat, and I'll tell the people, watch that leaf. Every shark here will approach that leaf just to make sure today it's not, it might not be a leaf today. I'm going to go explore that opportunity, see if it's something that's going to benefit me. So where, you know, it's said that you have to feed the sharks to have them approach your vessel, it's not true. We don't have to. I'm not saying that there isn't anyone out there that does. You know, they definitely shouldn't be, and it, at the end of the day, it affects people who are doing things the right way. I guess I'm answering your question, but I'm talking to everybody. What's that?
One more question. We're running out
Okay,
of
sorry.
time.
I typically rant, so I'm done. Go ahead and ask me any other questions.
Nate Wispin, I'm a retired Coast Guard prevention officer myself. Now I'm in the insurance industry. So one thing I wanted to kind of explain to marine insurance, licensed marine insurance guy, we insure some of the shark cage operations on the island. And we actually took photos with you because we had to explain to the underwriters and the carriers how safe this risk was. And the risk was inside the cage. Outside the cage, this is where, you know, buyer beware. If you have insurance, this is an industry that can shut you down. Insurance can shut you down completely. You'll be uninsurable. So think about it. We have a loss where a person dies or gets eaten by a shark, and you're not covered. Well, who are they going to go after? The company. The company's down, they're going under, and that's it. So, you know, if we're getting fined $100,000 for touching a turtle, but we're not getting fined anything for touching a shark, I mean, I don't get that. To me, it doesn't make any sense, right? So you know, anyway. My perspective is risk-based, right? So we want to prevent these things from ever happening. So like my fellow officer over there had said, all these regulations are written in blood, and they are, because if you don't have the opportunity to identify the risk and prevent it in some way, which are insurable because they're really protecting the persons, right? The patrons, we'll call them. But if you're outside that cage, or even if you're just snorkeling like a 30-person group of people snorkeling, I'd be much more concerned about them because there is no protection and there's no one out there to prevent any shark attacks or anything like that. So this is the Wild West. It's unregulated. Nobody has any safety management systems or programs that are approved or reviewed by anybody. So it's the company themselves. It's on them to do their safety practices. It's on them. So it's really on the company to have someone like me from a different perspective to look at these things and say, hey, look, this is an insurable risk or an uninsurable risk. So in the 1970s, some of you guys may or may not know, the insurance industry. Insurance, they would not insure anybody, so they couldn't run any more skateboard parks. Same thing's going to happen with the shark industry. As soon as someone gets killed and someone gets sued, it's going to be over with. So we have to get ahead of it now. We have to.
Easy to get these people to come here today. This is not for some people that aren't, necessarily the friendliest in this industry, we'll just put it that way, that needed to be talked to and massaged so that we can have this event. So consider this a real treat. I hope it's something we do in the future. Talking about insurance, maybe in the direction we take in the next one. But thank you again to all the panelists that came out for us, and thank you again for that. Thank you.